Welcome. Finally, Michael gets round to doing another music vlog. Well, just been that busy lately, like, so much to do. But anyway, as I said on the previous one, I've made an effort. Now, where did it all start, Michael? Well, that was a bloody long time ago. In fact, I was still at school in 1965 to 66, my final year. And for some reason I got approached by a couple of elders in the next level up to me if I'd like to join a band. And I said, yeah, well, why not? My father had been a multi-instrumentalist and had achieved a little bit of success over the years, but didn't pursue it too greatly because of grandfather's building business, which he got involved with. And then, of course, Second World War came along, and that's another story. But anyway, I could never pick up what my father was able to do, and that was play a multitude of instruments. I remember growing up in Gowgate, Barnet Castle, County Durham, and in the front room above my mother's hairdressing shop, my favourite hidey hole was the grand piano, which my father used to tinkle the ivories on quite regular, and was noted throughout Barnet Castle as the man who supplies the party atmosphere with his old keyboard skills. But anyway, I did manage to pick up his wonderful sense of timing, which was later brought to the table. So anyway, back to the first gig, which was on the school hall stage, and after that performance I did a bit more rehearsal for a talent contest we entered in Whitsuntide 1966, to be held at the Parish Hall, Barnet Castle, which later became one of my favourite venues. And I'll tell further on different stories of who came to that place. Normally they would have a dance on a Friday or a Saturday night, and it would involve two bands, because it wasn't really the days of discos. Maybe someone would play a few records while the bands were having a break, but discos really hadn't took off in them days. So, to keep the party rolling, as to say, they would get two bands. And normally, with a venue like that, they would have a band from out of town and a local band. But anyway, I'll get into them stories further. Now, that was the first gig I did in public at a talent contest way back Whitsuntide, Saturday evening 1966. Now, the two boys I teamed up with are Jim Buckham and a David, can't remember his second name. I left school and that was it, basically. I did follow on with a couple of more local bands, local groups around Barnet Castle, and I suppose out of all of them, the ones that were mostly well known was a band called the Chords. Chords, spelled K-O-R-D-Z. And after I departed from them, and before I went into the next band, it was decided by mother and father, who had split up at that time, what's our Michael going to do? Well, pursue his musical career was the main objective. And of course, father being a musician said, well, if he's going to do this, he needs to be tutored. Now, the first drum kit I got was an old Beverly kit, and you didn't really see many Beverly kits about. The only one I ever saw on TV was played by Pete York, who was the drummer in Spencer Davies' group, and that was the only Beverly kit I ever saw. And my mother paid £15 for that. Now, the guy who I bought it off, he was a drummer in the regiment, the Loyals, and obviously he was in the Loyals regiment band, and he was like first drummer or whatever it is, military wise, I can't remember. And so, as part of buying the kit, he gave me some drum lessons, to which I went over to the army camp where he was stationed on the other side of the river in Barnard Castle, and where I gained entry into the camp and went to the music room, where I was given some rudiments of drumming. Now, after the discussion between father and mother, it was decided my father had a few connections in the business. And one of them connections was a very good jazz drummer who went under the name of Phil Seamen. And it had come to light that Phil was doing drum tutoring at Doc Hunt's drum clinic at the rear of Shaftesbury Avenue in London. I could have gone local, but father wanted me to go to one of the best. And Phil Seamen at the time, he didn't normally do much on tutor side, but because of a bad habit he'd picked up, namely smack, he needed to feed his habit, and so he started doing drum tutoring. And well, how's our Michael going to get down there? Well, I'll tell you what we'll do, says mother. I'll give Auntie Ruth, our Ruth, a ring at Watford and see if she can put him up. And then he can commute into London. It was decided 3 times a week. I don't know what the fee was, because it was sorted out by my parents. But it was a vast honour to be taught by Phil Seamen, who indeed was a fabulous drummer. And so I went down to Watford and I started lessons, but the commuting from Watford into central London, and of course at 16-year-old, was quite daunting. And so eventually, after a week, it was decided that Michael better stop in a localish hotel, which I found to be the Sheraton Hotel in Palace Court, just off Bayswater Road, sort of Notting Hill area, which in many later years I went to live in, but that's another story. So, having finally settled in that hotel in one of the rooms, it had a bar in the basement, to which a lot of locals congregated in, and one or two of the residents from the hotel. Now, living across the road from the hotel, there was a house, a 3-story house, which in it resided quite a few musical people, acts. And the first act that I met down in the bar in the basement, obviously underage, but I wasn't telling that to anyone, and was Joe Cocker and the Grease Band, who had recently moved down into London from Sheffield. That's another story. They were on the top floor. On the middle floor was a 3-piece female singing group called the Paper Dolls. I'll try and drag some stuff out and I'll put it on. Back to the story. Commencing the tuition at Doc Hunt's clinic, in the next room to me was a very good friend of Phil's, and that was the legendary, later become the legendary Ginger Baker. Notice how Ginger copies Phil with the old cigarette in his mouth. And after one or two further lessons and that, I remember coming out of the room and into the corridor where Phil was chatting away with Ginger, having some sort of bloody argument. And I always remember Phil says to me, "What you bloody make of this fella here, Michael?" And Ginger Baker turned round to me and said, "Don't you open your fucking mouth." He said, "Keep your mouth shut. You're too young to speak to me." Which deflated me a bit. But I didn't really know Ginger Baker. I didn't know what he stood for. He, at the time, hadn't formed the legendary Cream. He was playing in an outfit called the Graham Bond organisation. Graham Bond at the top with the goatee beard, then Ginger on the left-hand side, Not sure who the guy was down the bottom, but who's that guy on the right-hand side? Yes, it's Jack Bruce, which was a great band in its own field. But anyway, I continued with the drum lessons for another 2 months. I think 10 weeks in total I spent down there. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, commuting into Shaftesbury Avenue, well, just behind. I'll put various photographs and this, that, and the other on, so you can see exactly where it was. Obviously nowadays none of that's gone. None of that's there now, all gone. And then after that, obviously, I returned back to Barnard Castle, where I got involved with a couple of more local groups, one of which I had the pleasure of playing alongside Jimi Hendrix at Darlington, which is all being talked about. But once I got involved with Roger and the Rodian down at 18 Earlsfield Road, I was then able to keep regular contact with Phil Seamen, who was dabbling in this and dabbling in that. He'd managed to get himself clean. So apart from a bit of old blow, he wasn't on the old smack, which was good. But as time went on, and Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton broke up, and there was the dismemberment of that fabulous band Cream, Ginger decided to do his own thing. But firstly, now this is a story that's not that very well known about Ginger Baker. It is documented, but it doesn't tell you the tale I'm going to tell you about. He got a documentary, a program of him travelling to Africa to join some drummers in a village in some part of Africa just beyond the Sahara Desert. But they thought it quite novel for Ginger to cross the Sahara Desert in a Jensen Interceptor, which was his idea. But, come on, a Jensen Interceptor in the Sahara Desert. Well, and the character like Ginger Baker. Well, you know for a fact what's going to happen, don't you? Yeah, he crashed it. And so Philemon was stopped. Luckily he wasn't injured, but the bloody car was written off. And Philemon stopped until they managed to get out there a Range Rover, which was very new at the time. And with having the Range Rover, in fact, he even crashed that one. So, this Philemon episode had cost the film company one Jensen Interceptor, 2 Range Rovers, one which got written off, and the second one which finally made it to this African village, whereupon they set about Philemon Ginger Baker with these African drummers. Now, after that was done, and it was edited and broadcast, in the meantime of all that going on, Ginger decided to form his own band. After his last episode, which I can't remember, he did go into another band after Cream. But he decided to form Ginger Baker's Air Force. Now there was 2 episodes of that, but the first one involved Ginger having to go to court for importation of illegal immigrants by boat into Falmouth Harbour from that African village. And what he'd done, he brought them villagers, them drummers, out that village on the basis of they're going to make big money. And he toured around England at various venues. Even the Redcar Jazz Club, he even went there, which I've mentioned previously. Now, someone blabbed on him, but it was quite easy to fall out with Ginger Baker. And if any of you have watched any of his documentaries and this, that and the other, he was, he could be quite an arrogant bugger. But he didn't turn up at court, but his lawyers did. And of course, obviously, his African drummers got deported and sent back home. And at the cost of Ginger Baker. So, speaking with Phil, he told me that Baker had been to see him and pleaded with him because of contractual commitments at various venues. Would he help him out and join Ginger Baker's Air Force too? And go on the road, which Phil finally decided he would do, but to his downfall. Because joining Ginger Baker's Air Force 2, initially the problem was what Baker could do with 2 hands, Phil could do with 1. But obviously Baker played a double kit, which I did for quite a number of years. And so he made it sound very full with the twin bass drums. And but Phil could virtually match him. He was that good. And of course Baker didn't like that. So what did Baker do? Excuse me. Baker introduced Phil back onto Smack. And unfortunately, that was Phil's downfall, because he was fairly big on alcohol at the time, and the combination of the alcohol and the Smack, and that was the end of the great Phil Seamen, unfortunately. And I, to this day, still blame Ginger.
Please hang up and try again.
But, hey, what's said and done? What can you do about it? So, that basically was me started, and it's got me back down, it's got me down to 18 Earlsfield Road. Now, I'll talk another time about things that went on, obviously the progression from roadieing into playing and doing a lot of studio work. We'll talk about that at the next time. So, maybe not as long as you thought it was going to be, but some interesting facts there and especially on the old legendary Baker. But now they've both gone. So, but it's music nostalgia. It's stuff that a lot of people don't know about. And this is why in my previous time living in London, mixing with musicians, working with musicians, socialising with actors and stuff like that. And when I've told these stories to them, you know, they've all said, Michael, this is musical nostalgia and it needs documenting. So I've started by telling you lot, but are people interested? Well, by the response I've had on here, no, not really. But for those who are interested, like my vlogs on us living here, I don't mind doing it because I quite enjoy it. So keep on watching.
Thank you for the days, those endless days, those sacred days you gave me. I'm thinking of the days I won't forget a single day, believe me. I bless the light, I bless the light that lights on you, believe me. And though you're gone, you're with me every single day, believe me.